everybody. Thank you. Welcome to the Latinx Comics Art Festival. This is the Comics and Pandemic Futures panel. My name is Justin Roof. I'm going to be the moderator. And with me is Dr. Diaz Ballesteros, Carlos Loso Perez, and Javier Hernandez. A little bit about myself. I'm a visual artist, I am a comic creator, I write and draw Brother Crow comics, and I'm a part of the Tualatin Valley Arts Activator, which helps practicing artists like myself transition into art activism. And I will go ahead and let our guests introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Diaz Ballesteros.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fernanda. I'm a professor at Cornell College in Iowa, and I teach classes on ethnic studies, Caribbean literature and culture, and Latinx comics. And I like very much to dance Zumba. I am from the Mexican Caribbean, and I have been in the US for over a decade.
You want to go
Thank
next,
you.
Javier?
Yeah, sure. So
should we save you
Javier
for last?
Hernandez. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Javier Hernandez. I'm a cartoonist, best known for the comic graphic novel series now El Muerto, which was made as a film in, oh my gosh, I always get the dates all mixed up, 2007. This last year just like disappeared, and it threw my whole life off. The whole pandemic shut in the air. But and also been teaching since 2003 here in Los Angeles. I teach comic book workshops at schools and libraries, and I also lecture at museums and universities about Latino comics and my own work. And in 2011, I co-founded the Latino Comics Expo with Ricardo Padilla. So this is actually our 10th year this year. So wow, that's a shock. But anyway, good to be here talking to everybody.
And I'm Loso Perez, an Afro-Dominican artist, cartoonist, and also educator. And I'm also the owner of Prime Vice Studios, and we're an art studio that teaches workshops and helps people, brands, and companies develop IPs using the sequential art method. So, and we help underrepresented groups and communities get their ideas and stories out and own their own narratives. So that way they could turn them into like viable assets like graphic novels or stories, or use them for digital media, transmedia purposes. And apart from that, I create my own comics. I have my own character called El Cómico that I use for comic series and online purposes, transmedia character. And I have the series in a comic book called St. Love City Funk, which is a bilingual Spanglish comic, and is about a bachatero that has adventures with a fairy that lives in his guitar. And besides that, I encourage people to own their narratives and tell their stories, and I think that's a very powerful thing to do and teach, and I use that in my work and encourage others to do so as well.
Right.
And pleasure to be here, and pleasure to meet everybody, and here to have a good time.
Excellent. Well, we're definitely happy to have everybody here on the panel. It's such an interesting mix of people from such different backgrounds and such different approaches here. But I think that something that we all have in common is that we all love comics. So I just want to kind of start off by asking maybe, and I'll go down the line here, maybe we'll start from the reverse order this time. We'll start with Carlos. What comics have you been turning to during the pandemic? What comics have you been kind of looking to for comfort?
Well, I'm kind of like a comics obscure collection kind of hunter. And just I'm on this app through my library called Hoopla, and it has an amazing collection of comics in house. So I'm like, they give you like recording, but I'm always looking for something that nobody's heard about. Sometimes what kind of stories they have. And recently, I just been reading this really interesting book called Ministry of Truth, and it's kind of about like this government department that investigates conspiracy theories that may or may not be true, and how they use it to kind of manage society in the public. and it kind of like these Men in Black kind of people going around and investigating situations. And the art's really amazing. Another one that I've found really great is one by Wilfredo Santiago called about Roberto Clemente's life. And that one has just amazing artwork. And I'm a big, just enthusiast about Roberto Clemente. But the art also, the way they tell the story, and pretty mind-blowing stuff. So I found that one amazing because I like to mix it up with fictional and non-fictional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I, media like, now WandaVision is kind of huge. So I've been reading some Scarlet Witch stuff. But that's kind of been my thing right now, just finding new stuff and then some comfort comics. One comfort comic for me has always been Sin City for some reason. Something about that.
Yes.
Like you could just wait for it and then call back and say, "This is really great story, really great comic." So that's one of my comfort comics for sure. Sin City.
Nothing says comfort comic like two-gun-fisted Frank Miller crime. I'm with you, man. Right? I'm with you.
It gets me in my cozies.
Right.
Yeah. How about you, Javier? What have you been reading?
Well, I mean, like recently, because we've been shut in for a year, but I mean, I've been going down like a rabbit hole. In fact, this is hopefully it's not glaring, but it's an old early 70s comic from Marvel Western Heroes. I'm fascinated currently with this guy here in the white cowboy suit, the Ghost Rider. He was the original Ghost Rider. But he's just got this whole white suit, even a white mask. And I've just been going on a rabbit hole, picking up the back issues, digging up his earliest appearances. And then I've also just recently been rereading my Go Nagai Devilman mangas. I read these 2 years ago. It's an English adaptation. But, sometimes you just go in cycles like, okay, let me go reread or let me go back and study deeper some of this work and such. So that's the most current stuff. But yeah, I could stay here all day telling you everything I read for the last year, but we don't have time for that. But I'd like to hear from everybody else here what they're reading.
Yeah. Fernanda, what have you been reading?
Well, I read a lot of comics online, not necessarily web comics, but comics online. And I follow very closely and Pictoline, which is a Mexican content company that use illustration for everything. They deliver news every day, illustration. Same case as the Neeb, which is an American same website with all sorts of online comics. So instead of reading the news, I just go to both websites and I get my Mexican and my American news. But I also follow two feminist art collectives that also use illustration for everything. One of them, it's a Mexican one. It's called Mal Vestida, Poorly Dressed. And the other one is Todas, which is from Puerto Rico, which means all in the female content. And I also follow a Mexican magazine, single panel cartoon magazine, that it started from the leftist newspaper called La Jornada, and this group of guys are Los Moneros, which are the guys that draw monos, which are the comics. And they have actually a TV channel in Mexico City that is called Chamuco TV. So they have been producing political comics for a very long time, and I also get my news from them. And one of the latest artists that I support and I buy his work, it's John Vasquez Mejias from the Bronx. He's New Yorican, diasporican, Boricua, and he just released last year a graphic novel on woodcut. It's called The Puerto Rican War, and I love it because I study a lot the 98, the year that Puerto Rico became an American colony, and how they teach us about that year is always the American War or the Caribbean War or the Hispanic American War, and he's decolonizing all this history and calling it the Puerto Rican War. And he also has a new one that is called The Dogs from the Bronx. So it's very good. I really like it. It's a total different way to do comics, and he just does everything handmade, and he sends it to you if you buy it from his website. So it's pretty much what I read. I also read a lot of things for teaching comics.
Yeah.
And like pretty much the Latinx artists that are in the art festival here now. Yeah.
Great. Excellent. Well, for me, I've just been, I was always kind of familiar with like the Chris Claremont Dark Phoenix stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much X-Men happened after the Dark Phoenix. So I've been kind of just, dude, I've been powering through so many X-Men comics, and then like all the New Mutants and the Wolverine and the Kitty Pryde, like, and Magic, like all the little side stories he's been doing, which like, I don't know, he started that like 1979 maybe, and I think he went all the way into the mid 90s doing that. So there's a lot. For me growing up, I was never into superhero comics really that much at all in the 90s. I still to this day kind of feel like, in my opinion, kind of the worst period for the big two for comics. Everything became about muscles and guns and stuff. But I'm just really loving all of the stuff he was doing in the 80s, just like really injecting these characters with like personality and really making stories about relationships. Like, I don't know, man, like that to me, like that's what good storytelling is about. It's about like having good characters and how they meet up against each other. And I feel like he really set a lot of that up in what he was doing.
There's a documentary on Chris Claremont's X-Men. It's either on Hulu or Netflix or Amazon. So you should look it up. They interview him, and other people about his work.
Right on. Cool. Thank you for that tip. Yeah, I'm loving it. I've never like I've always loved the art in Marvel Comics, but I've always felt like the writing, I followed a couple of writers that I like, but a lot of it's kind of up and down for me. But I've been loving this whole ride. And it's gonna carry me until this pandemic is over, man. There's a lot for me to read still. So speaking of which, what's the work that you guys have been creating in the time of since we've kind of entered into lockdown? What work have you been creating? And I guess another part of that is, how has the pandemic situation affected the way that you're creating work? So I'll go ahead and we'll start with you, Javier.
Okay, so I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of other people say this, creators and definitely comic creators. In many ways, like nothing has changed as far as like, because we're always working, right? We're always making our comics. I write and draw my own stuff, so I'm always like in a way it's kind of like, okay, there's less pressure to socialize out there, because we're not getting together at restaurants or whatever. So, but I'm always working anyway. But what has changed for me, what kickstarted me doing something new finally after forever and ever talking about it, I started my YouTube channel last, I think in March, April, or May, a little after the shutdown started. It got me thinking, like, primarily because I do so many comic conventions, like, okay, I'm not going to have, like, that's where I do most of my socializing. I hate to say that. Like, when I leave the house, it's because I'm going to a comic convention. But I go, since that's going to be deprived of all of us for probably the whole year, and now we've been literally a year, how do I stay connected with readers and people other than my social networks? It's like, well, let me do that YouTube channel. I've always said, I want to do a YouTube channel. So it's just, it's called Los Comics TV. It's just basically me talking about comics. I just, reach over off the shelf, pull out something, that I want to talk about that I've read. And I'm not, so it's funny, I'm not on camera. I'm not shy about being on camera, or I wouldn't be talking here with everybody, but I figure if I'm gonna do a show talking about the comic, the art, like, you know what, just put the camera face down on the table, and so you just see my hands for the whole hour as I flip through the whatever book I'm looking through, because I get right to it, you know. One thing I don't do, I don't edit. I never learned how to edit, and I always tell my students, I want to learn how to edit. So that's another reason I don't, because if I film myself, I'd have to figure out how to edit it and cut it in with the other footage. So it's like the show starts off with these famous hands now, and whatever book or comics I'm looking through. But yeah, you know, it's kind of fun because like you're right there in your studio at night talking to yourself basically for an hour. But like to me, that's communicating with people, because eventually when everybody hears it, it's like, okay, well, they heard me. Maybe they responded back, like just said something to the screen, even though I couldn't hear them. So that was really started partly because of the shutdown. Like, okay, I'm not going to be going out and communicating with people. Let me keep active or open up another front, because I'm very active on my social media accounts, as like everybody. But that'd be my main thing that started with the pandemic, is the YouTube channel. The work continued as always.
Right. And I know that you put out that Casa del Diablo during the pandemic. Are you still drawing for that one, or what are you drawing now?
Yeah, I did. So thanks. I did do a Kickstarter, I guess in the summer last year, because I'm doing a second graphic novel, the first El Muerto one, Days of the Dead. So there's a whole series planned. Here's a tip to young people in their 20s and 30s. Start your 10-volume graphic novel series at that age. You know, otherwise, so I'm working on the second graphic novel, but what I like to do is put out, like, when I first finish the first chapter, or actually I don't do chapters, I do, what do you call it? Part 1, part 2, part 3. I break the book up into maybe 3 or 4 parts versus chapters. I don't know what the difference is or whatever, but so when I got part 1 done of Casa del Diablo, I go out, let me put it in a comic, a pamphlet, and do a Kickstarter just to get the word out that there's a new graphic novel. It was my first Kickstarter, so that was really exciting and nerve-wracking to do that. So I got the word out, you know, sold a lot of copies to the Kickstarter. So now everybody who got that issue is waiting for the graphic novel, which is I'm finishing working on. So yeah, I'm looking probably summer for that, summer, fallish maybe. So, but thanks for yeah, I forgot to bring that up. Thanks.
Absolutely. Carlos, what have you been working on, and how has the pandemic affected your work practice?
So it's kind of a funny story. Like before the pandemic, like a month before they hit, I had moved here to South Korea. That's where I'm at right now. It's actually like Sunday morning over here. And got this really cool teaching gig where I get to teach using comics for people to, you know, learn English, students, high school. And so but then like a month later, the pandemic hit, and as it kind of started progressing, like, you know, some family has gotten sick, some people lost some family and stuff. So emotionally, it kind of put me in a whole shift and slowed like everything down. Like it slowed the whole world down. And it made me kind of focus, like, what do I want to, you know, what can I do, you know, and be in a happy place with, you know, like, and also that cut down on like clientele and everything. So I got back and started working on my SLC Funk, my original comic series that I did for my thesis. And I was like, I really love this story, but I've gotten so much better with this art. And this is kind of like such a pivotal book that I put out, you know, and I was really proud of it at the time. But then I'm just like, let me do like a remix of this and like expand on it. And so what I did, I redesigned some of the characters, and I started doing the book over, like use the same script, but like as hiring myself like with my current skills. And it went a lot slow. I thought it was gonna go like super fast. I was like, all right, I already know this book and I already been doing it, but I'm only like on page 5 completed, and then like page 10 like thumbnailed. So like, yeah, I feel you when you say, Javier, like start your graphic novel when you're 30, and I'm like, man, I'm almost pushing 40. I'm on page 10. I don't know how this is gonna get done, but you start to realize there's more than just you're feeling tired today. Like a lot of other factors kind of go into kind of slowing down what you expect out of yourself. So I had to learn how to be nice with myself and just patient. but I will say that the quality of the pages and the storytelling has definitely amplified because of that. So I feel like I have just like a better foundational kind of strength in my art, and I'm much more proud of it now, opposed to just like, check it out, I got a page done, you know, not so many
Right.
external pressures happening. So the quality of your work is, I didn't realize how much with less pressure and just treating it as like this special kind of self-care time
Right.
has affected the quality of my work. So I've just been working on like getting better at character designs, you know, and promoting upgrading my portfolio for the website and everything. And my comic series, I want to at least get it down to, you know, get it up to a certain page count to either market it, sell it, or self-publish. But right now, I'm really proud. I got a little teaser done. I got these 5 pages that look amazing, and I submitted to the first 3 pages to the Latinx digital art gallery. So, you know, hopefully you guys check it out.
Hmm.
Excellent.
And Carlos, I'm glad you shared I'm glad Carlos shared these in Korea, because I'm thinking, why is it so bright behind him? Is he in a snowstorm or something? I go, what part of the U.S. is he in?
Yeah.
I was confused, but I mean, it's morning for him.
They don't have curtains on these sliding doors. That's like the balcony back there. This is
Wow.
kind of like the best angle where I could put my little setup.
Mm-hmm. Looks beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you too, Fernanda, but before we move on, I just want to ask, kind of follow up for you, Carlos, is so how do you kind of keep motivated? Like, how do you kind of keep that fire going if you feel like the progress is moving slowly or something?
I had to learn how to be nicer to myself. You know, sometimes self-talk, you know, you draw a lot, you don't always say the nicest things to yourself. And I started getting into a lot of different kind of webinars that kind of, you know, are encouraging and stuff, and watching and digesting content that's more encouraging, and be like, hey, you know, stop putting everything on yourself, and, you know, be more positive about what you're doing, and seeing how important it is. You know, before it was just like my little happy time, but now I feel like it's like a personal mission. Like, hey, this story needs to get out there. Like, people are going to enjoy this. Like, I think about experience for the reader a lot more, opposed to just getting it done for the sake of getting the art done. So that's really helped me out, because as much as I read a lot of comics, like I didn't even get to name all the comics I was in. Like, I've been reading like Love and Rockets. I've been reading like so much of my comic heroes and going into rabbit hole. I'm like, wait, I have something to say and draw too, you know?
Right.
And seeing that it's not out there to the capacity that I don't feel intimidated. Like, oh, everything that needs to be said has already been said or drawn. Like, I still feel like I have a contribution to make with my stories. So that just kind of keeps it going. They're like, hey, but now it's also like I have a bunch of like thumbnails. I have a lot of notes. Like, I write a lot, you know, I have a lot of journaling stuff. That's like for the later part. And I'm just kind of focusing on like, hopefully one day I'll get to a point where this is all I got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, maybe the workshop or two, getting to that idealized place where I could have like, you know, like that shelf with my name of books and stuff, and having people hit me up, be like, this story did this to me, and I got through a tough time with it. And I'm just like, well, my story helped me get through my own tough time. So I think that energy really translates into your work, you know, and that's something that really keeps me going. Just the aspect of I have something to say, and people have been responding to my art in different ways now than before. So that's definitely something that keeps it going. Before it was kind of, you know, you get like dead air or nobody cares, or you're kind of feeling down on yourself. It's kind of hard to keep on going, you know, or just doing work for pay. You know, your client's like, this want this, and then you just kind of hand it in for the paycheck, keep the lights on. You know, thankfully, I'm in a situation where I don't have those kind of pressures, and I could just work solely with trying to provide the best experience for my readership.
I'm gonna jump in here because I have something to connect with what you just said, Carlos. That is exactly what I try to teach in an academic setting, on what are the possibilities of comics and graphic narratives and storytelling. That it's a community healing, and if it happened to the person that created the product, it also connects to the reader. Like, it happened to me, and I'm reading it, and I am represented here, and it it starts my healing process, but in a community base that not necessarily might be present in person, but we all know that we are not alone in a situation, in a feeling, in an emotion, in how we understand the world, in our cosmovision. And that is exactly what I try to teach in my classes. And the students have taken very well. They actually, after the class, they all shared with me that now they can see comics as activism, comics as a community, comics as a political space, comics as a solid platform for social change. And I am not an artist, but I'm a professor, and I encourage my students to create. And when I assign homework or projects or whatever, I always ask them to create from that origin, coming from there, from like, what do you want the medium to do for you? How can this help you keep going? And what can you find in the medium as comfort, therapy, companionship, anything that can also make it tangible, you know, like you have it, you can touch it, you can see it. It is not just words that are flying around. It is not just a conversation that you have with someone. It is actually there. And the materiality of the comic is what actually make people understand themselves when they actually have it in front. And my students created amazing assignments. There were like all sorts of things. There were mini comics, there were scenes, there were web comics, there were visual journals. And I think that they found a space in the classroom that they didn't have before, because they could actually show themselves in their work and in what they were reading. And I think during COVID times that we had to do everything like just here via Zoom, and we couldn't go to the archives, we couldn't go to the museum, we couldn't go to the festival. That really helped them to be able to share it with the classmates. And another thing that was very good is that a lot of artists and professors could join us via Zoom. And that couldn't be a reality, especially in a small liberal art colleges like mine, and we don't have money to bring anyone anywhere. But with Zoom, my students had an hour-long meeting with all sorts of artists, librarians, professors, activists, and it was just amazing because we talked to them anywhere in the world. And yeah, my students all saw that comics is a growing field, and it's actually something that someone can dedicate their life to.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
So it sounds like it sounds like you've found some pros in the way that we've shifted towards this kind of like online Zoom culture. I'm curious for Javier and Carlos, how you've seen it affect like the Comic-Cons and like the conventions, and like how has it affected your practice in terms of like not just getting in front of the public, but like their access to you, or you know what I'm asking? Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, like Fernanda said, I mean, with the Zoom and any format, digital format, you're cutting out distance, you're cutting out travel time, you're cutting out expense, because you got to pay for a flight and a hotel. So yeah, anyone can talk to anyone in the world, and it's amazing. So like this panel that's going to be seen by people can be seen not just by because the Latinx Comic Art Festival is held in Modesto, California. So we're no longer just going to be meeting the people who can just show up at the panel there. Anyone in, Pennsylvania, Korea, New York, Alaska, whatever, they can be watching our panels. So it gives me as a content creator, that amazing audience, potential worldwide audience. And it allows someone who, maybe someone in Japan who's always wanted to go to an American convention, like, oh, and I can check out all these cool panels and stuff. So, it's funny. Every convention, every event has turned to online, and we've always had this technology. And, there's always been online panels, but, now everything is online. It's going to be interesting to me in a year once things really open up and people finally feel safe and everybody gathers again. Our comic conventions, since we're about comics, our comic conventions going to have all their panels live. Are they going to have special content, though, like, pre-recorded, or are they going to record every panel and air it? Because, now we know, it's pretty easy to use, relatively speaking, this technology. So it'll be interesting to see how things go on after the open up, whatever you want to call it, resuming back to normal type thing. That's what I'm really curious about. And then even schools, are some students going to elect to just, hey, I'd rather just stay home 5 days, 3 days a week? Or even I know friends work in animation out here in Los Angeles, right? They're all working at home, and they're actually wondering, once, everything is cleared up, we can all go back. The studios save a lot of money by not having the lights on at the offices and everything, right? And the work is being produced at home. You're paying your light bill. So it's curious how certain jobs are going to be affected later. Well, just stay home and work. You're still getting paid the same. You're not traveling. You're not stuck in 2-hour traffic. So anyway, I'm really curious how all that works out. The connection of people and interaction once we have the option of being in person again.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was gonna add that, since for me it's been easier to connect with events that I wouldn't been able to do necessarily, or have more complications to make it out to. Like, connecting with you guys, and we're in 3 different corners of America and the world,
Yeah.
Last year I did a panel for Dragon Con, which is in Atlanta, and then one of the panels was in New York, and I was here too, So it does bring us together in new ways, and I kind of feel like comics will find a way to get out to the people, Like that doesn't never stop. Yeah, we adapt, and the nature of the comics industry that, we're at home and work in our studios, doesn't affect too much of the work. But the comic convention scene, that, you do miss having, go digging through bins, seeing what news, like the tangibility, that was a big factor for me. I really like, after the convention where everybody congregates by the hotels and stuff and talks their stuff and eats together, the stuff that you just kind of find out of nowhere, and the people that you just meet in person, that's kind of been, a big major miss for me. But but one plus is just the new kind of connections and new kind of content that we're kind of producing. That was, the technology was there, but wasn't necessarily, people weren't aiming for it. Like, oh, let's see this digital panel. People just want to go see people and ask questions in person,
Right.
So, I don't think the digital now that's been established is going to be kind of like a new normal established. I don't think it's going to completely go away. So it's going to be kind of like unique experiences. Like, okay, this guy can't make it for this convention, but there's going to be a panel, and we're going to have this person that's cool, moderating it, and this other person from this movie talking or something. So that might happen, but to predict, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just taking it one day at a time, and trying to enjoy the ride as much as possible, because, it's a big old mind. That, it's a whole new reality happening. So.
I know that for me personally, it's nice to kind of like be able to reach out to more people in this way. But for me also, like a big part of my experience at these conventions is like, I just started writing comics like maybe 3 years ago. And so people don't know who I am. And so I want to get my comic in their hand. I want them to open up. And I always think like, if I can get your kid to look, I can sell you a book. Like so to me, like, I feel like the hardest hit is that like, I'm not getting the eyeballs on my work in person. It's like, I do have a couple of pieces in the virtual gallery as well, but it's not nearly as impressive as like being surrounded by paintings and comics and like, you know, things for people to kind of just kind of like, you know, kind of play around in and look at and touch and pick up and flip over. And so that's been kind of a big downside for me. But I also agree that with Javier that it is good, and with Carlos as well, that it's good for us to be able to reach like a totally different audience as well. So I see both sides, and I miss everybody. I miss seeing the people that I see like maybe once or twice a year, you know. So that's kind of part of it as well. And then I know that Fernando, that you spoke a little bit about how it's changed with you in terms of doing your online classes. And but I do want to kind of get into this because you were kind of touching on it a little bit. I did want to ask you a little bit about the kinds of assignments that you are giving to your students, because you mentioned your zines and your comics classes. So are those specifically the kinds of assignments that you are giving to your students in your classes?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we we go little by little in a very basic way on the comic theory, and students start learning what are the names for the things that they already know. And one of the first assignment for them was to create their own panels and to create a layout and what they wanted to what they wanted the comic to look like. So I based this assignment on two comic professors that have done this before. Linda Berry, that she has a whole book that is the Syllabus Comics, which has amazing exercises that I highly recommend for all sorts of students and all learners and all ages. And then I also based this exercise on Nick Susani's website, and he also teaches this. And both exercises are presenting like a basic panel structure, and what is the gutter, how does the sequence work, what can be the page layout. And a lot of students came up with great ideas. Some were very comfortable with the traditional left to right, 4-panel, whatever strip. Some of them were very creative and innovative, and they did like a whole page, no panel sequence from like down up, and it was very impressive. And yeah, so those are some sort of like assignments for people that love comics and enjoy reading comics, but maybe they don't know what is the gutter, and maybe they don't know the actual function of the gutter and how the gutter can take you from one panel 20 years after to the second panel, you know, especially in the Bros Hernandez work. Is like there are some sequences that are like decades, and students really enjoy that. And another one was how to create a mini comic, and we did like a whole page, you know, 8 little squares, and we folded and we cut it in the middle, and they were fascinated with that. And because now they can do their own super fast and quick, and you know, just do it yourself. And also I presented to them a lot of scene distros that are like online, and a lot of them produce an academic essay as a scene, and it was amazing. It was just fantastic. And yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what to do with all these works that they created. Yeah.
Yeah, make an anthology. You're like a vanguard in comics teaching. If you should make like an anthology or like a digital zine that could like
that would be awesome.
That way like other people could access it, you know?
Yeah.
I can attest to, and I saw Javier nodding as well, but I can attest to Linda Berry as just a total comics guru. I do a Friday night comic class that as a student, as an attendant, through this thing called the Believer magazine, and it's every Friday night. It's a different artist, and they're all well known, and a lot of them are teaching stuff that they picked up from directly from Linda Berry. So every Friday night we just hang out, we draw. It's last Friday was drawing your favorite scenes from a movie. So we told a movie in 4 panels, and a lot of it is just focused on comfort, not drawing comics necessarily to sell a comic book, but just the process, just being involved in the process, the meditative process of drawing, drawing things that bring you comfort, just giving yourself the pleasure and joy of sitting down and drawing a comic. And I can really relate to also with Carlos what you were saying about redrawing your comic. Certainly when I drew my first issue of my first book, I had no idea what I was doing at all. And I really just, this part of me was just like, you just have to suck at it for a little while and then get better. And so like, to me, it's like I'm always the most proud of the last thing I just did, and that's the one that I want to show you, and that's the thing I want to share with you. And it's like I part of me is like, well, I want to go back with the skills that I have now and redress those things like what you're saying. But the other part of me is like, I've got so much in front of me that I still want to get at as well, you know? So
Yeah, that's something that's always tickling me. But you know, one thing that I struck when I went to a comic school to go learn how to draw comics was I drew all my life, but I didn't know how to, like you said, I didn't know how to make comics, like the process of it and making it happen and getting training in that. And I read books and I was just winging it. You know, I was a fine arts painter mostly, and so imagine like Basquiat trying to like make comics. You know, it was just, I was like all over the place. And then but I wrote a lot. Like I had a lot of storytelling. So it was like I always struggled to like translate the stories into comic panels and how to compose the layout and everything. So like that's why I look back at my older stuff, very fond of the story, but I'm just like, I can make it look better now. Like there's still stuff, to me, it just kind of looked like raw diamonds, you know? But there's plenty of stuff that I'm just like, yeah, nobody's gonna see this. Keep that in the dark. That's the vault, you know? Like nobody to ever want to see it at all. One thing that's helped make it better for me, and also being mobile and kind of a digital nomad now, was getting an iPad. Like the iPad technology has really stepped up a lot to be able to produce comics. I didn't get to mention it, but you guys probably read it in my little bio that I was sponsored by this app called Comic Draw. Super cheap app, it's not like $10, but they let you practice it for like 2 weeks, and you could do like from blue, thumbnails. It has like a scripting feature, an inking feature, so you could pretty much produce like a whole cool digital comic with quality enough that you can print it out if you want later, or work on it, even export it for Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint. And focusing on just trying to get better at digital has been helping me out as well, because I was trying to learn traditional and then mix hybrid with digital and then scanning stuff in, and I was struggling with a lot with the digital aspects, just making it look like how they looked on my phone and on my iPad and on my screens and stuff. So getting better at just the digital craft really helped me a lot. Just kind of feel more confident. And then also practice-wise, you could just upload a little JPEG, sketch over it to see if you want to do something with it or delete it. Opposed to have, like, when I was in school, just stacks and stacks of papers that I had to, like, go through and, like, shred up or, like, kind of have a little moment if it gave me joy or not to keep them, So, that's one thing that digital has helped me kind of work through what's the keeper, what's the deleter.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, that's it.
Okay. Well, I did want to say that we are kind of nearing up the end of our time, but I do want to real quickly before we start wrapping it up, Javier, I'm just really curious about what your journey was like from kind of like the earliest start of it. It's just something that I'm just, my own curiosity. It was like, it was El Muerto your first entry into comics, or what was it like for you?
Yeah, I had done some comics as a kid, like everybody, just scribble them at home. But by the by the 90s, early 90s, mid 90s, I was just like, I got to put my own story out there. Like Carlos mentioned earlier, I loved what he said about he's reading all these other comics of other people, graphic novels, and he's like, hey, you know what? I got to get something out there too. So that is a great motivator. Like, yeah, all these people I love their stuff. So I want to get my own voice, my idea out there. So I just started looking into back in the 90s, self-publishing, like print, had to learn about printers and stuff. Now you kids got it so easy out there with digital, you can do your comic at home, you can do it on your computer, and you can post it that night. And you might have people in Egypt and Australia read it, I never had that opportunity. But it was just wanting to get my voice out there. So I actually went to conventions. I talked to a couple of people. I went to their table. Hey, I talked to Carlos Saldana. He's from LA. He does a comic called Burrito. Hey, I want to make my own comic. Any advice? He just said, just do it. I love that because, I mean, like me, he's not going to take an hour to sit there and tell some kid like all this information that they're probably not going to even listen to. He was right. Just do it. Like Carlos also said, your first ones, and you said you're going to suck at it. It's going to look horrible. Who cares? You got to get it out there. Like, because honestly, let me tell everybody out there, no one cares about our ideas in our head. I got tons of ideas in my head. I got tons of ideas in my sketchbook. I like it. I love it. I'm proud of it. But the world doesn't care about ideas. Think of every person you admire, right? In the arts, whether it's a poet, a rapper, a dancer, whatever it is. You know them because of the work that they published or that they put out or that they performed. You don't know them because of their thousands of sketches or their notebooks or their journals. You don't. You learn about it later, but you only know them because they put the work out there. So you just got to do the work. Whether you want to go to school for that, that's fine. Whether you want to watch, 100 hours of YouTube tutorials, which they're out there, or just try drawing your first comic, and then whatever happens, that's fine. Don't, and do another one, So for me, it was just wanting to get my voice out there. And, just like Carlos Saldana told me, just do it. I just had to do it. I couldn't wait for someone to give me a chance or pitch it to somebody or whatever. I just did my comic, and El Muerto was, my baby boy, right? I mean, I've been doing this 23 years. And like I said, I planted the flag for a 10 graphic novel volume series on the character. So everything I want to say in life as far as the creator, I want to do it mostly through that character. I've done other comics, and I probably have another few ideas I'll work on later. But just do it is the best advice. Never mind that Nike trademarked that phrase. I'm sure I could say without having to pay him $1. Please just do it.
That's excellently put. I mean, like if you want to be in the comics industry, make a comic. You're in. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So it was a really pleasure to get to kind of sit down and hang out with you guys. To meet Carlos and Fernanda, you guys, it really is a great pleasure. And Javier, we've met before, but it's always an honor to speak with you. I love your work. You're insanely talented, and I'm a big admirer of yours. So let's just go down, and you can let people know where you would like to be reached, and you can share whatever social medias or anything like that you'd like to share with the students. And Javier,
I want to add one. I want to add one thing, Justin. I want to ask you all, and I will also answer. What is something that is happening right now wherever you are that is also being voiced out in comics, and you want people to know that is happening? I will start. I am right now writing an article about the crisis that is going on in Puerto Rico with the state of alert of femicides and trans violence against trans people or women. And there are a lot of collectives of female illustrators from the island that are illustrating the face of the dead women and dead trans people, and giving their stories to the internet and just naming them and letting everyone know how they died, how they were killed for just for being women or trans. And I think that this is very important to acknowledge not just the work of the artist, but also the crisis that is happening in Puerto Rico. That is not an isolated case, and it's also happening in Mexico. And now in March 8th, a lot of Mexican illustrators are also going to draw about this and show the faces of the women that have been killed. And I think the world is in an emergency state, and we need to address this violence against women. And I'm very proud of these female illustrators that are taking the time and the position and making art about this. And that's all. And you can find me and in academia, Fernanda Diaz Basteris, academia.edu. Or you can also follow my class, my teaching class in Decolonizing LX Comics and on Instagram. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that as well. I mean, I don't know specifically things that are happening right now that are going to appear later in comics, but my inclination is to think that most of the things that we see coming up are going to come up in art, and that's going to include comics as well. So like, you know, the things that happened on, I'm curious to, like, I don't know if your families celebrate Dia de los Reyes or Epiphany. Mine does. So I really felt like that January 6th nonsense was especially disgusting. I hope that, and you know, it might mean that it has to be me, but I hope that there are artists out there that are going to make that connection and kind of, I don't know, that's something that's been on my mind lately. So that's something that I expect to see in art in the future. And of course, you know, the politicizing of wearing masks and all of that kind of, everything that's been coming up is what's on people's minds, and that includes artists and comic creators as well. So, but okay, I'm sorry. You can also reach me at, my Instagram is my name. It's Justin Roof. Everything that I do online is my name. So my Facebook, my Instagram, I do the Brother Crow comic. So if you look up Brother Crow, you'll see that. I'm currently working on a painted comic. All of my paintings are online at Etsy, and I have a special coupon code for the students. If you type in Modesto into my Etsy store, you're gonna get 15% off of basically everything in the store, including paintings.
Wow.
And my and my store is Chalk Design by Justin, and you can see all of my artwork on there. All right.
Easy. So to talk about what, follow up with what Dr. Doctora said, for me, I've been kind of thinking about how BLM, you know, Black Lives Matter, and just kind of seeing the Afro, you know, dealing with anti-Blackness, and kind of seeing how we're all in the same struggle and the roots of these things. And that has led to, you know, something that I've been working on since I was in college and got kind of put onto certain information and knowledge and everything, and how to just kind of navigate and, you know, be more holistic about, you know, the Blackness in Hispanidad, Latinidad, you know, especially me being, you know, Afro-Dominican, you know, Afro-Latino, and having those uncomfortable conversations and seeing like where the real enemies are and where the real, you know, where the struggle is and how to get past it and the healing process about that. So you kind of see that a lot in my work, where I'm constantly trying to decolonize all the stuff that's aimed to kind of program us to keep us separate and kind of suck in crap, you know, mental crap. And I think I'm really happy that there's a lot of content and a lot of people out there producing content that is making people more aware. Because when back in my days when I was, you know, in college, you had to like dig in through shelves and have professors that would put, you know, introduce you to writers and books and stuff like that. And a lot of history's coming up that wasn't easily available before, and a lot of documentaries and everything. Just kind of be like, oh, I didn't even know about the 14th Amendment like that. Oh, I didn't know that this is what the 13th Amendment was happening with that. I didn't know that. I watched was it Latin History for Morons, John Leguizamo's
Yeah.
Love it.
performance, and he's like, how are we so invisible?
Yeah.
Like, we make up like more than 3/4 of this part of the hemisphere, and like we haven't done anything. We're important, and that also has to do with Latinx, in the comics. It's like we've been here. We've done stuff. We're in there, and I think more of that content is gonna get produced, and I hope it does. And in our pedagogy and our teaching, I think we do that as well. We're part of that. Hey, man, get that story out there and get your facts better. And I know I struggled with that during school times, but now being out of it, I'm working on it. Like, I did about Cimarrones, a little mini comic about, the escaped slaves that created colonies in the mountains and stuff like that. And, my comic is about, dealing with a lot with magical themes, supernatural themes, but not like whitewash Scarlet Witch stuff. It's like what, where voodoo comes from, where, brujeria comes from, Dia de los Muertos, like that's not something that's like some spooky stuff. It's something about, it's a cultural thing that with the high esteem, how to respect those traditions. And, in my comic, St. Love City Funk is about, being displaced, but also dealing with the colonization, the programming of religion, Christianity and stuff, and how to still beat the consequences of being yourself and what that produces. And it deals with a lot of interesting themes in there that may make some older generations uncomfortable, but it's about having some dialogue about it more than anything, and an entertaining, fun story kind of way. So that's how I feel about that. And you can find me on Instagram or any social media, Los Comic. That's where I put like my artist personal stuff. But the brand, my company is Prime Vice, like here, and that's at prime_vice. You can find it on all social media, also primevice.com. That's the main real estate website where you can find and reach out for anything and hit me up. And we also have a YouTube channel where I produce, I have some content up there of how-to videos, relates to a blog. I have handouts and stuff, and I'm always willing to share and connect with others. And I'm a passionate person about teaching as well. So if you guys want to reach out to have a talk or, talk for a class or anything, I'm all about it. And yeah, that's my little spiel. You can find my comic, St. Louis City Funk on Comixology. You can get it on there. And hit me up through email or DM if you want to get a hold of some work.
Cool. So yeah, I'll just really quick, just to answer Dr. Fernandez's question. Yeah, the stuff that I'm seeing now, you may not necessarily see it later because it's not really going to be published, but it's just, and I'm sure everybody here knows they're all instructors. Just seeing the work. I teach high school age students, I teach comics workshops. Just to see the work they do, because most of them have never made a comic, and those are my favorite students because it's like, no, believe me, after this class you'll have made a comic because you'll try something new. Just the stories that they tell, because we always make them autobiographical stories, and it's like, man, students have so many stories to tell, obviously, and because they're at that awkward age, they may not necessarily want to tell you the story on camera, but man, you get a piece of paper and a pencil and draw it and write it, and it's like sometimes you get some real personal things. Really personal, kind of shockingly so, but in a beautiful way. So I'm just saying, students are watching this. Yeah, just the stories that you folks have to tell, and us as adults and instructors, like, give them the chance, or parents, give them the chance to tell the stories. Give them a piece of paper and a pencil. Comics are cheap. That's the basic thing you need. So yeah, I'm just honored to be in a position to be able to, be there in the class, even digitally, like to see something that a young person came up with. And not just the fun stories, like the young kids will do ninjas and pirates and monsters and dinosaurs. Those are really fun too. But really, when you're able to see somebody's personal story, man, that's a privilege that, I don't know, I never thought I would have starting 23 years ago, just making my comic like Justin asked. I was just making Alberto comics. But as an instructor, it's like I've been such, privy to such amazing, beautiful work. So all the instructors know this. You guys see this all the time. And so students out there, thank you for sharing your stories whatever class you're in, whatever you're putting out there, you know, even if it's hard to maybe share it in person, put it on paper. It'll help you release something, and it'll really enlighten someone's life when they read it. So basically, you can just go to my blog, havzilla.com. Like Godzilla, it's Havzilla. All my links are on the right. Or you can just go to Instagram, Javier Los Comics, LOSCOMEX. And I'm always posting on there. And then I have a link tree in my bio with all the link to my web shop, my YouTube channel, and everything. So anyway, thanks everybody. It's great talking to everybody. I didn't know I was going to talk to someone from Korea today. So thanks to technology for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hope we can connect again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.